You learned something wrong years ago and you still believe it today. Someone told you a fact that wasn't true and now it's stuck in your head forever. You built your understanding on bad information and every new thing you learn just reinforces that original mistake. Your brain locked onto the first version it heard and refuses to let go. This is anchoring to initial knowledge, and it's filling your head with outdated, incorrect, and useless information that you can't get rid of. Whatever you learn first becomes the foundation for everything else. And if that foundation is wrong, everything built on top of it is wrong too. But your brain doesn't care. It treats the first thing it learned as the truth and makes everything else fit around it. And that's keeping you stuck with beliefs and knowledge that stopped being accurate years ago. So what is anchoring to initial knowledge? It's when the first piece of information you learn about something becomes the reference point for all future learning. Your brain grabs onto that initial knowledge and uses it as an anchor. Everything new gets compared to it. Everything new gets interpreted through it. And if the anchor is wrong, you end up with a completely distorted understanding that's almost impossible to fix. Here's why this destroys your ability to learn. You don't approach new information with a blank slate. You approach it with whatever you already think you know. And what you already think you know is usually the first thing you heard about the topic. So when you learn something new that contradicts your initial knowledge, your brain doesn't update. It rejects the new information or twists it to fit the old information. The anchor stays in place and everything else adjusts around it. Think about learning a language. Maybe you learned that a word means one thing. And now, every time you see that word, you translate it the same way. But the word actually has multiple meanings depending on context. You're missing all those other meanings because your brain anchored to the first definition it learned. So you keep making the same mistakes over and over because you can't break free from that initial anchor.
Or think about skills.
You learned to do something a certain way when you first started. Maybe it was the wrong way. Maybe it was inefficient. But now that's your method. And when someone shows you a better way, it feels wrong. It feels uncomfortable. Your brain wants to go back to the original method because that's the anchor. So you resist improvement because your initial knowledge is too strong. Anchoring to initial knowledge is why first impressions are so powerful. The first thing you learn about a person becomes your anchor for understanding them. If you meet them on a bad day and they seem rude, that's your anchor. Now everything they do gets filtered through that initial impression. They could be nice 100 times, but you'll still think they're secretly rude because that's what you learned first. Your brain anchored to that first impression and refuses to update. This happens with facts too. You learned something in school. Maybe it was simplified. Maybe it was outdated. Maybe your teacher got it wrong. But now that's what you believe. And years later, someone tells you the correct information and you don't believe them. You think they're wrong because what you learned first must be right. Your brain treats initial knowledge as more trustworthy than new knowledge, even when the new knowledge is better. Here's where anchoring gets really dangerous. It makes you resistant to correction. When someone points out that what you believe is wrong, it doesn't feel like they're helping you learn. It feels like they're attacking your anchor. And your brain defends that anchor like it's defending your identity, because in a way, it is. That initial knowledge has been part of how you understand the world for so long that changing it feels like losing a piece of yourself. This is why myths persist even after they're debunked. People learned the myth first. That became their anchor. And now when they hear the truth, it sounds like the myth is true and the truth is fake. Their brain has it backwards but can't flip it because the anchor is too strong. So they keep believing something that's been proven wrong over and over. Anchoring to initial knowledge also makes you overconfident. Because you learned something first, you think you understand it. You don't realize your understanding is based on incomplete or incorrect initial information. So when someone with better knowledge tries to explain something, you don't listen. You already know about this topic. You learned it years ago. Why would you need to relearn it? But what you know is wrong. You just don't know that it's wrong because your anchor feels like truth. This shows up in debates all the time. Two people arguing, both anchored to different initial information. Neither willing to update because their anchor feels like the foundation of their argument. So they talk past each other, both convinced the other person is ignoring obvious facts, but they're not ignoring facts. They're just anchored to different starting points. And those anchors are controlling everything they think they know about the topic. So why does your brain do this? Why does it give so much weight to whatever it learned first? Because learning is expensive. Your brain uses a lot of energy to process and store new information. So once it learns something, it doesn't want to redo that work. It wants to keep the original learning and just add to it. Replacing initial knowledge means admitting the original learning was wasted effort. And your brain hates waste. So it protects that initial investment by refusing to update even when the update would make you smarter. Your brain also uses initial knowledge as a shortcut. When you encounter something familiar, your brain doesn't analyze it from scratch. It just pulls up whatever it learned the first time and applies that. It's faster. It's easier. But it also means you're responding to the world based on old information. And if that information was wrong, you're going to keep being wrong no matter how much new information you encounter. The anchor also creates a coherence trap. Once you learn something, you build other knowledge on top of it. Now that initial piece of information is supporting a whole structure of understanding. If you try to change the anchor, the entire structure feels unstable. So your brain resists changing it because changing it would mean questioning everything you built on top of it. And that's too much work. So you keep the wrong anchor just to avoid the discomfort of rebuilding. So how do you break free from anchoring to initial knowledge? How do you update your understanding when the foundation is wrong? First, assume your initial knowledge is incomplete. Always. Even if you learned it from a good source. Even if it made sense at the time. Initial knowledge is almost always simplified or outdated or missing context. So when you learn something new, don't automatically filter it through what you already know. Consider that what you already know might be wrong. Second, actively seek out information that contradicts what you learned first. Don't just look for confirmation, look for challenges. Look for people who disagree. Look for updated research. Your anchor is strong, so you need to deliberately expose it to opposing information. Otherwise, you'll just keep reinforcing it. Third, be willing to relearn from scratch. If you realize your anchor is wrong, don't try to patch it. Throw it out and start over. Yes, that feels like wasting your original learning. But keeping wrong information is worse than starting fresh. You'd rather have accurate knowledge late than inaccurate knowledge forever. Fourth, notice when you feel defensive about your knowledge. That's a sign you're protecting an anchor. When someone challenges what you know and your first reaction is to defend it, pause. Ask yourself if you're defending truth or just defending the first thing you learned. Most of the time, it's the latter. And finally, update your anchors regularly. Don't let your knowledge sit unchanged for years. Go back to topics you think you understand and see if there's new information. See if what you learned initially is still considered accurate. Your initial knowledge has an expiration date. But your brain won't tell you when it expires. You have to check. Look, anchoring to initial knowledge is your brain's way of being efficient. Learn something once, use it forever. But that efficiency comes at a massive cost. You end up carrying around outdated, incorrect information that shapes everything else you learn. And the longer that anchor stays in place, the harder it is to remove. The truth is, a lot of what you think you know is based on whatever you happen to learn first. And what you happen to learn first was probably simplified, incomplete, or just wrong. But your brain treats it like gospel because it got there first. And now you're rebuilding your entire understanding of the world on a foundation that was never solid to begin with. So the next time you're absolutely certain about something, ask yourself why you're certain. Is it because you've carefully verified the information? Or is it just because that's what you learned first and your brain anchored to it? Because most of the time, it's the anchor talking, and anchors lie. Subscribe if you just realized how much wrong information you're still carrying around.